I'm Riley,
And I'm Roni,
and this is the Plan to Eat podcast.
where we have conversations about meal planning, food, and wellness to help you answer the question, what's for dinner?
Hello, and welcome to the Plan to Eat podcast. Today, we are going to talk about getting back on track with our New Year's resolutions.
It's February, which means if you are like most people, you maybe have fallen off the wagon with whatever your goal or resolution or new habit change was supposed to be in 2023. So don't feel bad if you fall into that category. I'm pretty sure it's like 98% of the population.
Yeah, I bet Google has a statistic. I'm going to Google it.
Google it.
All right, thanks, Google. Okay. 41% of Americans who make a New Year's resolution. Oh, only 40% of Americans make a New Year's resolution. I didn't realize that.
Oh,
Only 9% are successful.
okay. Well,
All
so
right.
my number was a little exaggerated, but even still.
So when we talked about this back in December, we kept it very generic because you are not even a resolutions person. I'm not really a resolutions person either. I'll try to make, I'll like say, hey, I'm going to try to, this is my goal. Here are some things I want to work towards. Um, but I would say it's not like a whole like resolution. Like I'm going to do this and change everything about myself, which I think can be what sometimes like happens with resolutions. And so I think for our listeners, considering that only about 41% of the population even makes resolutions, maybe people didn't even make them. So use what we're going to talk about today and what we talked about back in December for when you have a goal or have a new thing you want to do. Because that happens all year to everybody, right? We're like, oh, wow, I've really fallen off the bandwagon. I'm drinking water. I can start drinking some more water. So I guess let's just jump in, Ronnie. Why don't you start? How can people get back on track with their goals or resolutions?
I think really the first place to start is to kind of analyze whatever your goal or your resolution was. One of the things that we talked about in December that I think Riley mentioned it, is breaking your goal down into kind of like bite-sized pieces so that you can attain these small pieces that kind of lead you to your big goal. So one of the things that I would think that would be important to look at is to look at whatever your goal was, look at how you've broken it down and think, is it still too big? Like if you've already, at this point, if you've already fallen off the wagon with whatever you were attempting to do, there has to be a reason for like, what was the reason that you didn't actually make this happen? And part of that could be, it's still too big. Even your bite-sized chunks are potentially too big. And one of the ways that I think is helpful to look at it is like, how can you redefine your expectations for the goal on a week to week basis or even a day to day basis? So, kind of like depending on what your goal is. If your goal is to drink more water, well, day to day, how can you achieve that better? If your goal is to exercise more, well, on a week to week basis, like how many workouts do you want to get in this week? Is it, realistically looking at your schedule, looking at your life, can you fit in 2 workouts this week? Well, that's certainly better than 0. And so that is helping you achieve your goal of, being somebody who is an exerciser or whatever. So I think that that's really the first place to start is kind of analyze your goal, look at how you've broken it down and think, is there a way that I can actually make this a little bit simpler for myself?
Yeah, I mean, the thing that all of that makes me think of is Couch to 5K programs.
Mm,
You look at a Couch to 5K and it's like the first week, you're running a mile. You're not even running a mile. You're running like maybe a minute on, a minute off, a minute on, a minute off until you reach a mile. Something very bite-sized. So I think that using that same mentality for whatever your goal is and I think the problem with resolutions is that we put this huge expectation on ourselves to radically transform
hmm
instead of doing the bite-sized thing to actually get to the goal. Which I think is why it's more disappointing when we failed by February because it's like, well, I didn't change everything. I didn't completely revolutionize. I'm not working out every single day or 5 times a week. I'm not weightlifting. Well, okay, but were you weightlifting before? Were you weightlifting in December at all? Like, you probably should, if your goal is to weightlift 5 times a week, you probably need to start with once a week.
right.
And kind of build to that point. Your body needs that. Your schedule probably needs that as you get more comfortable with it, as you build a new habit. And this can be applied to everything. But yeah, so kind of like reframing it, going back to the basics and just trying again, I think is really important and not just jumping off the whole thing and quitting altogether at this point.
Yeah, I think it's really easy for a lot of people to label themselves as an all or nothing kind of a person, but I'm just gonna be like tough love right now. If you identify as an all or nothing kind of a person, don't let that identity be an excuse for either like the reason that you fell off the wagon or for the reason that you can't get back on the wagon because you don't have the time or you don't have the energy or you don't have the resources to commit fully to something. Make it something that's easier to do, make it something that's moderation rather than I'm going to do this 7 days a week or I'm doing it 0
Yeah.
days a week. It's better to have part of something than to have all of nothing.
Mhm. Yeah, I love that. I'm thinking about what other people like, what other goals are so unique to people. And so Ronnie and I, we can't even think about all the resolutions that or goals you might have for this year. They're very personal to you. But
Yeah,
maybe your goal is spending more time with friends. Well, that goal requires that 2 people are involved in it. It's not just you. Maybe it's spending more time with family. It's another goal that requires more people's action than your own. You can certainly be the catalyst that tries to make it happen. But I would just say, like, have you improved at all?
yeah,
Look at that as a win, and then just try to keep improving. And also understand that life gets a little crazy and sometimes things ebb and flow. And so, like, maybe this is your month where you can see friends once a week or, I don't know, 2 times a month, depending on what your life looks like. Maybe it's you get one big family get together. Like, that's your win. Put your effort into that one thing. I think that you and I gave this encouragement back in December, but uh, it's just proactively working towards things. It doesn't have to be this all or nothing kind of approach. And I'm guilty of that too, of being, well, I didn't learn how to play the guitar, so I can never learn how to play it instead of, well, I could practice every day for a year or twice a week for a year if that's too much, and just kind of ebbing and flowing with the season of life you're in and with what your goal is. And just, it's easy to bite off more than you can chew. So how can you do this more like adequately with your life, I guess, is a good time to do that in February. Okay, it didn't go
right,
so well. So what can I do differently to try to improve upon this resolution or goal?
right. Well, one of the things that you mentioned in there too, talking about like the little wins and stuff brings me to another point is that I think one of the ways to help yourself stick to your goal is to, actually take time to review your like this idea of like analyzing your goal, but also taking time to track your progress. I am personally somebody who really loves to, see like gold stars on my calendar or something, or like, X's on my calendar for the days that I did something. And it can be easy to fall into the mindset of like, oh, I have a 7-day streak going and I can't break the streak. It doesn't have to necessarily be that way. I know that that feels good for a lot of people to, like, have a streak, but okay, let me see if I can explain this in a way that makes sense. But really so it's like, the way that I look at it is that, the goal needs to be broken down into either, like, a day by day basis or a week by week basis, so that way at the end of every week or the end of every day, you have a win to celebrate. But also, when you expand that and look at the entire month as a whole, you can say, "Holy cow, I actually did that thing, 14 days this month, which is really good."
Yeah.
And so there's like the micro aspect of it and also like the macro aspect of it, where like you can look at it both ways. And it's like, days add up to weeks and weeks add up to months and months add up to the entire year if your goal is to do something over the entire year. So I think that tracking is really important, whether it's on a calendar, whether you have, an app on your phone. One of my next points is to talk about like having resources that will help you recommit to your goal. And one of those things could be some resource that helps you track. Like I said, whether it's a calendar, planner, an app, if your goal is related to something like fitness related, you can buy fitness trackers that'll help you keep track of that stuff. Um, I'm sure those exist for all sorts of goals as well, reading goals, there's apps for tracking your reading goals, all those kinds of things.
Yeah, I love that. And it does remind me of something else we talked about in December, and if you did not listen to that episode, I highly recommend that you go back and listen to it. Taking the time to find something to help you get back on track, you know, um,
Right.
it's so easy for me to not even think about those kinds of things. But using an app like Planty for your meal planning, if your goal is meal planning, perfect. Use that tool. If your goal is budgeting, find a budgeting app. I think that when we try to do things or like take these things on essentially by ourselves, we're more likely to fail because we don't
Mhm.
have something to assist us. And I'm not talking about people to assist us because, we're not even talking about friends or accountability partners or like if you hired a trainer or if you hired a nutritionist or whatever else it might be, or if you're doing something with your spouse, like there's so many things that you could use friends for, but these are things that are not even related to a person. It's download an app. It's if you don't have like the budget to hire a trainer or down or buy a fitness app, well, YouTube has free workouts all over the place. Use that. YouTube's free. And so kind of using the tool as that spark of like, okay, this is going to get me back on track, and that'll help me track wins, which helps me track progress, and wins help us keep going. So
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly. That's the key thing right there is wins help you keep going. And when you're tracking your wins, you're able to have a record of that rather than feeling like, well, today I messed up. Well, that's okay
yeah,
because yesterday you did what you wanted to do, you know? And so being able to keep track of those wins keeps the progress moving forward.
yeah. I mean, I just what is motivating to you? I lean into and think about what is a win to you. Like I'm a
Mhm.
big fan of writing it on my calendar, of putting a gold star, or so I'll buy a sticker pack um that's like something that means that I worked out or I drank water or whatever. I like to see those. Getting
Mhm.
to stick it on my day and be like, "Oh, I did that." Like to me, that maybe sounds silly to people, but that to me is like part of helping me feel like I'm reaching my goals, and those little tiny wins are really big deals to me. If I'm trying to do something really specific with my budget, maybe there's like a fun money section of your budget, and when that gets to a certain amount, you can spend a percentage of it or whatever. Maybe you set aside $1 here and there, and when it builds up to, I don't know, you can buy whatever you want. I think Rosemary, she was a great person to talk about this because she was so motivated by wins. And so do these little things and think about what motivates you and then try to get to that win.
Yeah. I'm like you. I a couple of years ago, so every November there is a like a challenge, a program that happens that's called National Novel Writing Month. And the goal for the whole month is to write 50,000 words in a novel, your own novel throughout just during 1 month. So I think in order to do that, like the goal is to each day write, I think it's like roughly 1,600 words, 1,684 or something like that words every single day. It's like if you do that every single day, cumulative, you get 50,000 words at the end of the month. Obviously, some people, spend one day writing 50 words, the next day they write 5,000 words. Like people can be all over the place. But so one year, I've done it multiple years, and one year I did it. I bought a sticker pack that was like these little typewriter stickers. And so every day that I reached my, 1,600 word count goal, I was able to put a little typewriter sticker on my calendar. And it was I don't know what it is about that, but that felt so rewarding to just have like a visual of, okay, I reached my goal today. Will I be able to reach it tomorrow? I be able to put that cute little sticker on my calendar tomorrow? Maybe that's not for everybody, but you and I are similar in that regard.
Totally. I wonder if this is personality based because, like, for me, even just crossing off everything on my to do list feels good. And
Oh,
that
yeah.
feels
Oh,
like
yeah.
a win.
That feels great.
For people listening, maybe what constitutes a win is greater than ours.
Sure.
But again, I think it's knowing yourself and knowing what motivates you and working towards whatever that is. I have a free app on my phone that reminds me to drink water. And if I actually track the water, then this little person fills up with water. And so at the end of the day, the whole person is blue. And I like it. I don't do it every day, I'm gonna be honest, but when I do, I get excited about it. "Oh, my little
Yeah.
person, I drank all my water. I drank what I should have drank." Just finding the things that speak to you and that are also like, these are things that are almost free that we're talking about. We're not
Oh,
talking
yeah.
about, maybe your awards cost money, but, like, stickers are pretty low cost, like, drawing a little heart on your planner to signify that you did something that was reaching your goal on your planner, that's essentially free.
Yeah.
And so finding those little wins, I think is really unique to everybody, but, you know, you have to
These are
find what's right for you.
these are our ideas, at least.
Yeah. Yeah. Buy a new water bottle. Maybe that costs money, but buy a new water bottle. Does that motivate you to drink more water? It
Right.
does me.
Okay, so something that we talked about in our episode in December as well is how sometimes when you set a goal, you might just forget. This happened to me in 2022. Originally, I was going to set a new goal for every month, whether it was, taking something away, adding something to my life, whatever. Uh, and I think I only did it for about 3 months before I kind of forgot. And I was like, got to the end of the year and was like, oh, yeah, I was going to be doing a different goal every month. Whoopsies. So if you're like me and you're forgetful, a really good thing to do is just create reminders, whether that's a reminder in your phone. Riley and I have admitted that the reminders on our phone do not help us. We ignore
Nope.
those. So if you're like us, pick a different option. I would say I'm a little more motivated by adding it to either my physical planner or like my Google Calendar, so that I would get a reminder in my Google Calendar for that. But I think having reminders, even if your goal is a goal that's like you're trying to have a goal that spans the entire year, like you're, trying to save extra money every month and you have a specific monetary goal you want to reach, just having a reminder of the very first day of the month that tells you, hey, just focus on saving money this month is going to help you remember that that's something you're supposed to focus on. So that way you don't go 3 whole months and be like, oh yeah, I forgot I was supposed to be focusing on saving more money, and I just haven't even been doing it because I completely forgot. Our minds are not perfect. We will not ever remember everything that we need to do, that we're trying to do. And so relying on other resources to help us recommit to things, I think is a really important part of this process as well.
I do wish that we could talk to somebody. You and I are very similar in this way. I go in advance in my planner and put things like, remember to ask Ronnie about blank. Like, because I don't need to ask you today, but I'll need to ask you in 2 weeks, you know?
Right.
Um, and so these little reminders, they work really well for me because I put it as a to-do item in the future.
Yeah.
And then I don't have to waste the brain space thinking about it or, oh no, I'm gonna forget. I should just ask her now. Well, no, you don't need to ask her now. You need to wait because it's not the right time, whatever
Right.
the thing might be. But this is where I wish that we maybe could find out from somebody else what kind of things works for them because uh, because you and I, have that same mindset about things that I'm having trouble thinking about what somebody else might do. Can you think of something that maybe is useful for your husband? Like, what would he do to help stick to a resolution?
I'm really not sure. I think this could be a fun opportunity. Maybe later in the year, we will do, like customer input on
Yeah, yeah,
on how they stick to goals. We did that last year. We did a 2-part podcast series on customer meal planning tips.
yeah.
So, maybe a little later this year, we'll send out an email and ask for all of your tips on, how you stick to goals, how you stick to habits, those kinds of things so that we can share different perspective.
Yeah.
So that could be something fun to do.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that again, it's like these visual reminders, kind of like in your planner, but maybe printing out your meal plan for the week.
Yeah,
Um, is that reminder of, oh, it's here, but then I need to do it too. Maybe that kind of like
right.
like printing something and putting it on a fridge, or maybe the sticky note on your mirror in your
Yeah,
bathroom. I don't know, those kinds of things. It's kind of like when your car tells you you need an oil change, or you have
yeah,
that sticker in the top of your window that says, when you get to this many miles. These visual reminders are so good for me. But like, what other wins, I think would be really great to hear from people, like, what wins really help motivate them?
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess another thing is that okay, so I mean, this is getting a little bit back into the, what tools and resources you could use, but potentially if you're going after a goal, and you have an accountability friend, that person could also text you and be
Yeah,
like, "Hey, how you doing on your goal?"
yeah,
I mean, that does kind of put the onus of that onto somebody else a little bit. But if you have somebody who, either you guys are committing to the same goal or for whatever reason, they're very interested, they're very invested in you reaching this goal. Maybe they're just your BFF and they really want you to succeed. That could also be another thing. And then if you're somebody who is motivated by other people, that could also really help. Last year I read this book that's called Better Than Before by Gretchen Rubin. She also has another book called The Four Tendencies. And they're both of those books are related to what are the things that motivate you to take action in your life? And so the 4 tendencies are basically like her evaluation of the 4 different personality types. And one of them are people who are called obligers, and obligers require outside influence in order to really take action on things in their life. And so if you're one of those people, if you're somebody who's like, "Yeah, I don't ever go to the gym unless my workout buddy is going with me," then you probably need to find an area in your life where you can, have somebody help you stick to some of the things that you're trying to stick to. Because it's really going to be the thing that'll probably motivate you and help you take action.
Yeah, I love that. That makes me wanna go read that book.
It's really good. The I
Mhm.
haven't read The 4 Tendencies, but Better Than Before is an excellent book, and I highly recommend it.
I love that, and that makes me wanna go read that book, and I've heard you talk about it before, so I definitely should just go read it. Um, but it makes me think about some goals that people might have, like signing up for a marathon, but not being prepared to run it, you know?
Mm,
And then that is that motivating thing. It's not necessarily a person, but a commitment that you've made,
sure.
to do that kind of thing. But often progress, toward like progress gives us those wins towards our goals. So, unfortunately, sometimes actually just doing them
Oh, yeah. Well,
is
yeah, you need that, like, deadline,
yeah,
You need
yeah,
that hard deadline of, like, "Well, I'm running a marathon on June 13th. I better start running."
yes.
Alright, so as we talked about, last time when we talked about goals and resolutions, if you chose meal planning as the thing that you wanted to do in 2023 and you've fallen off the wagon a little bit, we want to give you a few tips so that you can continue meal planning and hopefully implement meal planning into your life so that it'll be a habit that you do all of the time.
My first tip for this would be start small. And I feel a bit like a broken record. I say that all the time. But plan 2 dinners. See how it goes, just planning a little bit at a time. And if your goal is to plan, every single week out and all the details of that, I still recommend starting small. If you're not actively doing this, it's a totally new thing, you know?
Yeah.
So how can you, just ease into it? Maybe you get into the grocery store and get really sidetracked, from your meal plan because you see things in the store and you think, "Oh, that sounds so much better than what I planned." Well, how can you resolve that? Grocery pickup, grocery delivery, having your spouse go and pick up if that's an option for you. Maybe an older sibling, like a not an older sibling, but like an older child, go do the grocery shopping for you to help you stick to the meal plan you made. Uh, because I know for me, calling an audible at the last minute means that I always spend more money. Because it's hard to like stick to the plan, but then veer off a little bit, and then I'm buying more than I need, or maybe not what I needed for the other thing that looked so good. So start small, and then try to figure out where your roadblocks are. If you get into the store and get distracted, well, then resolve that. Don't go inside the store.
Yeah, I would say related to that, keep your meal plan simple or also to, plan recipes that are 30 minutes or less. If you're having a hard time sticking to even a simple meal, even a small meal plan that you made, plan recipes that are quick and easy to prepare. Also plan recipes that you're familiar with. So that way when you make them, they're just like on autopilot and you don't have to be, thinking about if you like where all the ingredients are or how you're supposed to saute this one thing and blanch this other thing or whatever. It's just a recipe you know how to do. You get the ingredients together, you do the steps, and it's done. And then I think also, planning around the items that you have at home already is also a really that's something that can help you create your meal plan is going into your cupboards, going into your refrigerator, looking what do I already have that's, giving me some inspiration for what I could put on a meal plan. You have pasta noodles and pasta sauce. Cool. What kind of pasta are you going to make?
Yeah. I love that tip because I think it's very easy with any kind of resolution, is to go in it with this mindset of like, I'm gonna go big. It's
Yeah.
kind of like that idea earlier that we talked about maybe your goal is weightlifting 5 times a week. Okay, if you are not weightlifting and you weightlift 5 times in 1 week, you will not be able to walk. You're gonna be in so much, you're so sore, right? So this kind of same concept applies here of just what's familiar, what's simple to make. Don't go in and think you're gonna make a 5-course dinner for your family at 5 o'clock one night,
Right.
because you won't stick to that. I can feel like I can say that with confidence. I really love that tip. That's a great one, Ronnie.
Yeah, I think that, because potentially part of your goal related to cooking and meal planning is that you want to learn new recipes or you want to become a better home chef. Well, I still think you can keep your meal plan simple and just put some of those like fussier, more complicated recipes onto a day that's less busy or maybe onto the weekend. So like you can do both things. You can achieve your goal of learning new recipes, becoming a better home cook, learning new methods, while also still feeding your family every night in a really uncomplicated way.
Yeah. It makes me think about what I do around the holidays. So, Thanksgiving week. I know on Thursday that week, or maybe Wednesday, depending, that I'm going to be cooking a lot of things. I've got a lot to make. It's a lot of cooking effort.
Yeah.
So my other meals that I plan that week are so simple. They're very low maintenance. So that kind of same idea of if you plan something that week that is really complicated to make sure the rest of your week is not too difficult. So you have the energy going into that homemade ravioli night. It takes 5 hours or whatever. That homemade ravioli night, you've got the energy. And maybe that sounds silly, but we talked to Erin Lowell of YNAB last year, and she talks about all these different levers in your life, emotional, financial, I can't think of the rest of them off the top of my head, but go ahead.
Convenience was one of them.
Convenience, yeah. And what lever are you pulling at any given time? And so if you have a really busy week, don't overdo it. Plan some simple stuff. If you know you're gonna make on Saturday night, you're gonna make this amazing fancy homemade ravioli, plan super simple stuff the rest of the week.
Hmm.
Just especially as you're easing into a new habit, just try to simplify it how you can.
Right. Yeah, and then going back to, we talked a little bit, about scheduling things, so that you don't forget your habits. I think you can also use meal planning that way. You can schedule your meal plan. You can pick a specific day of the week. This is my day that I meal plan. A specific day of the week. This is the day that I grocery shop. So that way, it does become this habitual thing that you do week to week, and you have a time set aside that you're going to do it in. You can even add it to your schedule. Like if you use a Google Calendar, an online calendar, you can put it in there at the time when you're busy so that other things don't get booked during the time that you're supposed to be creating your meal plan and going shopping. Or, if you write things on a physical planner or on a calendar, write it in there as well. So that way it's a visual reminder for you, to be like, okay, yeah, Sunday, 2:30, I'm making my meal plan.
Yeah. That is, going back to this idea of your commitment to yourself is just as important as your commitment to other things, and by
Yeah.
scheduling it, um, if you follow a schedule like a planner like us, um, by putting it on a calendar, you're kind of giving yourself that, like, "Nope, I'm doing this thing. I'm booked that day." And meal planning shouldn't take a day. Meal planning with Plan B, 10 minutes to 30 minutes or less, I would say, like somewhere in that 10 to 30. And so schedule it and just hold yourself accountable to this thing of like, I've got an appointment. I'm going to go do this thing. I've been known to meal plan like laying in bed on Sunday nights. It's like 9:30 or 10 or whatever. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to make this really quick and just do it really fast. And that's something that works really well for me. Maybe you do it sitting in the parking lot of the grocery store before you walk in. But, like, setting aside that time to do the thing and actually doing it when you say you're gonna do it, I think helps you stick to your goals because it is becoming more of a habit.
Right.
Eventually you won't need a make meal plan on your calendar. I don't put it there. It's that's the thing I do on Sundays, and it's like brushing your teeth. It's like I just do this thing, and it just becomes part of your habits.
Yeah. That's a great tip. Another idea that I have is, and this kind of relates specifically to plan to eat, but I think that, so if you're somebody who's like, I don't want to do this week after week, I just kind of want to do it one and done. I think a really simple way of doing this is to plan 2 weeks in your planner. So in Plan to Eat, you could add, your recipes for 2 full weeks. And then you could just simply copy those 2 weeks down to the following 2 weeks. Suddenly you have a whole month planned. And you could even, save those 2 weeks as a menu in Plan to Eat, and so that way you can just reuse that menu whenever you want, and it's a full 2-week menu. Potentially, some people's hesitation around this is like, well, we're just eating the same recipes for the whole month. Not necessarily, if you make your 2-week menu, have some variations in it. The difference between the first week and the third week, well, you're hardly going to remember that you ate that recipe 2 weeks ago. You're just going to be like, oh, great, done, ready to go to the grocery store and buy new things. Um, so I think this is a really, if you're somebody who's like, the reason that I don't meal plan is because I can't do it every week. Figure out the way that works for you to just plan the whole month ahead of time. You don't have to do your whole grocery shopping run for the month all at once if you don't want to, or if you have perishable items that aren't going to last for the entire month. But you could certainly get at least the planning portion of that done all at once. And creating a 2-week meal plan and then duplicating it, it's not going to take you very much time at all. I'd say 20 minutes.
Just to add to that, you could then make your planning just once a month planning.
Right.
And then once you've got 12 menus made, you don't have to eat the same thing in any kind of order. It could be 2-week menus that you've made, but you planned once a month for that whole month, or, something like that where
Yeah.
you get into this rhythm of, yeah, planning is something you hate to do. So make 2 weeks and make a menu. If you did that a couple of times a year to add some more variety, then you really wouldn't need to even feel that tension with, "Oh, we already ate this 2 weeks ago."
Yeah.
I know some things that people do are, create a menu that is notes of maybe it's a protein, and so they make this meal plan, but it's just a little template, and it's like Monday is chicken, Tuesday is tacos, Thursday is leftover night. Friday is we're eating out, and Saturday is uh fancy new recipe. And then that way they put that template on their planner and then they plan around that. So it gives them some kind of spark, so okay, two tacos. Google yummy taco recipe. That one looks good. Plan it. That kind of thing. Okay, chicken. Something new to do with chicken. Google it, whatever, some kind of reminder that fits your family's kind of eating habits. Um, Maybe your family really, really loves pasta. So it's a pasta thing. Maybe your family really, really likes a vegetarian night, but something to kind of spark your interest in the planning process that you do and your future self thanks you for it because you're still planning, but there's a little bit less work of the agonizing, I don't know, nothing sounds good,
Yeah.
or I'm full right now. It's a bad time to plan. Those are things that get me too. I'll try to meal plan after dinner and
Mhm.
my husband will say, "Well, I'm too full to even think about more food." Or I don't know what sounds good. And so just some kind of little tip for yourself. I don't know. I think that would be really helpful for me and hopefully for other people.
Yeah. I think related to that, well, at least the idea of I have no idea what sounds good. I think really important to have your, family go-to recipes. They might be the recipes that you end up eating. Say you have 10 of these recipes that are your go-to recipes. You end up eating, 5 of them in 1 week or something. It's really the important part about creating a meal plan is the creating a meal plan. It's not so much about I'm wowing my people every single night. Like the right? Like the point of creating a meal plan is like we're getting fed, we're eating the food that works for us, we're eating, the things that we're making the meal plan that works for our budget, all of the different aspects of that. It's not so much about how can I have so much variety every single day or every single week. Sometimes you just have to go to those go-to recipes when you need to make your meal plan. If your family loves meatballs, plan meatballs. And it's totally okay to just plan the things because there's an aspect of it too that if they're the recipes your family loves, well, they're not going to mind eating those 2 weeks in a row. So definitely when you're having those moments of like, I have no idea what I should be planning right now. I think it's totally okay to have some recipes that you just fall back on.
And those are some of the easiest nights at our house because I don't need a recipe. It's a bit more mindless, which is less agonizing, like I don't have
Mhm.
to like shut down work or, whatever it is that I did that day or, you know, my 2-year-old is starving. Like I can like kind of like my brain can not have to think about the food that I'm cooking because I know how to make it. I'm assuming most people have a recipe like that. that is that back pocket thing they can pull out. Shoot, it could be grilled cheese sandwiches,
Yeah.
but like that's fine. Whatever that thing is for your family or for you as the cook, or the chef of your home, whatever role you fall into, you've probably got one. And like to me, there are nights when I just need to make breakfast for dinner. That's
Yeah.
my go-to. Because I need the mental capacity to do something else, or I'm just tired, whatever it looks like. So don't be afraid to fall back on those and plan them to give yourself that favor.
Great tip. Alrighty. Well, I think that wraps it up for today. Do you want to talk about a recipe you had
Sure.
recently that you loved?
Yeah. So ironically, the other night I made breakfast for dinner and it had been a while. I'm from the South. It'd been a while since we've had grits. It's not always my husband's favorite thing, but we often do, if we have breakfast for dinner, we'll often do a biscuit or a waffle or a pancake in addition to some kind of egg or fruit, that kind of thing. And so last night I decided I would make grits. And so I made them. If you've never made grits before, it's roughly like a 4-to-1 ratio, 4 cups of water to 1 cup of grits. It's a lot of stirring, but you want to make sure they're really cooked. And then you can add whatever you want. I am a savory grits person through and through. And so I always add butter, lots of salt. And then last night I added pepper jack cheese and then green chilies to it. It was really good. And this is not really a recipe I can share other than the details I just told you because it's with a lot of wing in it. um, but it was really delicious and everyone really loved it, including my toddler. So parents out there of toddlers, if you're looking for something to give your kid uh, that is a little bit different, try grits.
Good idea.
What about you, Ronnie?
We had Rubens, and I actually don't know that we've ever actually made Rubens at our house before. I just always see them on a menu at a restaurant and think like, oh, a Reuben sounds amazing, or I just order one, something like that. And so, yeah, I know that you guys eat Reubens kind of frequently, and so I was a little inspired by you, a little inspired by going to a restaurant and seeing it on the menu. Yeah, we had Reubens and they were delicious. My husband was like, "Let's eat these all the time, please." And just like such a simple meal to make. The recipe, you made your own homemade Russian dressing, but certainly if you didn't want to do that, you could buy Russian dressing from the grocery store. But yeah, really yummy, really good, kind of like cold weather sandwich because it's all nice and toasty. So
Yeah.
yeah, we loved that.
Yeah, I love those too. And like you said, they're really simple, but they feel like an elevated sandwich.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
it's not just like a ham and cheese sandwich. Yeah,
Yeah. In 2 weeks, we're going to be interviewing a professional chef. And I'm really excited for you to hear what recipe she mentions at the end of our podcast because it's another one of those Reuben type meals where pretty simple, pretty basic ingredients, but just elevated kind of
yeah.
makes dinner really special. So maybe that's the theme of this year.
It's actually a recipe that would
Simple.
go really well with a Reuben.
Oh, it would. I would. Okay, now that we've tempted you fully, make sure you tune in 2 weeks to our episode with Mira Keshav. It was awesome, and we can't wait to see you then.
Yeah. Thanks for listening.